Welcome to your first assignment. This video will expand on some of the points made in the guidebook and the standard response below. You will need to have your sound turned up. The topic of trait versus type is important because type represents a rather special way of viewing people which is not the usual way we have come to expect in measurements. Almost everything you see on TV that relates to any sort of measurement will be a trait approach. Failure rates in schools to mortgage rates to divorce rates are all trait measurements. These are almost always characterized by less of something on the one end of the scale and more of something on the other end. Let's take a group of students. This circle represents the whole group. Now let's take a common trait measurement like their exam scores and put some letter grades to them. This is a typical example of a trait scale. You have the good marks on the one end and then less and less of the good marks as you go to the left. The left end is deficient. It is deficient by definition. It has less of a positive trait measurement, in this case exam scores. On the right, the A plus might represent 90%. Then you take some away and you get an A, which might be 85%. Then you take some more away and you get an A minus, and so forth down to the lowest grade. Now we can overlay the graph. It simply shows that most people get middle grades, around a B minus, but a few get A pluses and a few get Fs. But trait scales are almost always creating the haves and the have-nots by cutoff points. In this case, the cutoff for scholarships might be set at a minimum of A minus and anything less gets nothing. Go low enough and the person may not even pass. You can think of many cutoff points that create winners and losers. SAT scores for college entrance, income levels for car loans, typing speeds for clerical jobs, eyesight for pilots, and the list goes on. So what happens is that trait approaches are used to create winners and losers. The end result is that people are afraid of being judged and found wanting. That's one of the big fears of people using personality type assessments. They are afraid of the results. In comparison, personality type assessments sort people into two different but equally valued groups. Introversion is not seen as having less of something called extroversion. It is a totally different way of expressing one's energy flow. Everyone learns something positive about themselves, so there are no winners or losers, just winners. Your role as a practitioner is to reinforce the positive aspects of any personality type and help them make the best use of their natural preferences. Here's the payoff to knowing this. It means that all personality type results are positive and have value. Many clients will be surprisingly anxious, making jokes about even having a personality. This illustrates that they are afraid they will be measured as opposed to sorted and found wanting, in other words, being made into a loser. You can assure your clients that their type results will be helpful and encouraging. Low preference scores indicate the client is uncertain of his or her results. Let's take an example. There are 15 bipolar questions that sort for extroversion-introversion. If the client chose the extroversion option 14 times, they would be indicating a clear preference for extroversion. The preference clarity score is created by subtracting the two scores. So in this case, the score would be a preference for extroversion with a clarity score of 13 out of 15. The significance of this strong score is that the test-retest correlation of people with this strong a score is 0.99. In other words, if they took the assessment next week, next month, or 5 years down the road, they would almost always score as an extrovert. If another person chose extroversion only 8 times, the preference would still be extroversion, but now the preference clarity score would only be 1 out of 15. You will note that if the person changed just one of their extroversion choices, they would now score as a low-preferenced introvert. Now the test-retest correlation is only 0.46. which means that if the person retook the assessment next week, they might change their type from extroversion to introversion. Sometimes clients will ask, how come I'm changing back and forth? The answer is that they are not changing their type. They are consistently expressing what was obvious at the start. They are unsure of their preference and basically hovering around between the two. However, a low score is still a positive correlation and is the best indicator of that person's type. So don't assume your client should distrust their result. Even with low scores, the great majority of clients will see their result as fitting. Sometimes you will hear, oh, I have a low score for my feeling preference. That must mean I'm more of a thinker. As you can see from the numbers above, a low score for feeling is still choosing feeling more often than thinking. Otherwise, it would be a thinking preference. Review the debriefing notes on 122 of the manual. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please contact your mentor.